Hey, what is up guys, Murgaman4 here, and today I'll be giving you my thoughts on The Well, a Doctor Who episode that, if I'm being honest, I have very conflicting feelings about. The episode gets off to a rocky start. There's a decent TARDIS scene to kick off the story with Belinda and the Doctor's growing concern over the fate of Earth, but then they land and they don't really seem that concerned anymore. I mean, I understand the Doctor pushing that away in the moment, but it's a bit disappointing to see Belinda losing even more of what made her so exciting at the beginning, and just becoming another excited, passionate adventurer. Though, even if this is the character's weakest outing so far, Varda Sethu continues to dazzle. But from here, we have one of the most baffling lead-ins to an adventure I think the show's ever done, with the TARDIS conveniently providing the Doctor and Belinda with exactly the same spacesuits as those outside, there happening to be 2 spare helmets waiting for them the second they exit, and nobody questioning the presence of either them or the TARDIS until after they arrive on the planet below. I mean, I get that they had to be separated from the TARDIS somehow for this episode to work, but this is so breakneck and unnatural that it took me right out of the episode, which is the exact opposite of what you want a cold open to do. However, things do pick up once we actually get to the surface. It's a classic base under siege setup. A mining colony has gone dark, and the military have been sent in to investigate. There's some good rising tension as we enter the base and witness the chaotic aftermath of whatever it is that occurred, until we come across the sole survivor, Alice. Her predicament puts her very much at the center of the episode's conflict, and she was the highlight for me. Throughout the episode, we're led to question whether she's innocent or a threat, and I think the story gains an interesting wrinkle by casting a deaf actress in the role, with further distrust drawn from the fact that not everyone in the room can understand every conversation. As well as the additional drama, it's some solid commentary on how many people simply aren't as receptive and welcoming to those with disabilities. But regardless of whether Alice herself is a danger, it becomes clear that something has happened to her, with Belinda getting these brilliantly chilling glimpses of a creature, a being behind her. As the distrust ramps up, it becomes apparent that anyone that walks behind the creature dies. Or in other words, if it was a clock face, you die at midnight. So, while I've mostly been enjoying everything so far, I suppose now I ought to talk about the big mid-episode twist. This is actually a sequel to the 10th Doctor story, Midnight. A story that's one of my favorite pieces of media that I've ever experienced. A story that worked so well because of the unknown, because of the amount of questions left unanswered. It was perfect as a standalone. And the fact that this was going to be a sequel did actually leak. I knew about it going in, and I wish I didn't, because I think it negatively impacted my experience. But even then, while I feel like it avoided undermining the original, which was initially one of my concerns, I just don't think this is a good sequel. Primarily, it just feels forced. Outside of some vaguely similar vibes, there's really no connection between these two stories. It really just feels like the sequel aspect was bolted on top because they thought it would earn them points from the fans. I think this is emphasized by just how sloppily the reveal is done. I mean, Ncuti acts it brilliantly, but the script is really heavy-handed in order to get him to the conclusion that he's been here before. Like, what tips him off is footage of one of the miners saying, "We don't know what it is," and... I mean, how many creatures have you met, Doctor, that you didn't know anything about? Why did someone saying they didn't know what it was make you think that you did? Add to that them having to rename the planet and refer to diamonds as Carbon-46 just so that the Doctor can have his revelation. It just doesn't work for me. On top of that, the creature itself is far less interesting. What made the original Midnight Entity great was that there were no rules. We didn't know what it wanted, what it was capable of, what its weakness was. But here, we're given something more explicit. It kills what's behind it, can't see itself in a reflection, and if you kill the person who's hosting it, it'll move on to you. At the very least, these aren't rigid, but they're still pretty closely adhered to, and I just think it makes it a lot less scary. There's also an attempt to do the same kind of infighting and distrust that the original did, and while it's good, it's nowhere near as effective. I think in large part because the characters, other than Alice, are just so generic. Even the 2 leaders of the group, while better, are pretty bare bones and difficult to care for. But also, most of the deaths are caused by the creature directly. I feel like it would have been much more fitting if it had gotten them to kill each other, as seems to have happened at the base before their arrival, which we do get a bit of, but not much. And the deaths themselves are honestly kind of silly. The way the soldiers just get tossed across the room really doesn't match the horror with which everyone is responding, and doesn't look nearly as fatal as it's supposed to be. I know there's limits on what Doctor Who can do, but I wish it was something at least a little bit more brutal. Finally, I mentioned earlier that we got a glimpse of something. With a new creature, that's cool. With a midnight entity, nope. I hate it. It should remain completely incorporeal, no physical form, no audible voice. Again, it's just nowhere near as interesting, and it's frustrating to watch it, not because it's bad in and of itself, but because it's drawing a direct connection to a much, much better episode, and I can't help but be disappointed when it doesn't live up to it in the slightest. I just wish this episode had its own identity instead, because I think that would make it a lot easier to enjoy it. At the very least, I do like the ending. I'm glad that the Doctor's solution doesn't actually work, and the final scene where the creature invades Belinda is the closest that this episode comes to recapturing the magic of the original, especially with the later revelation that the creature escaped after all, and maybe had never even been on Belinda to begin with. It would mean Shaya's sacrifice, as well as Belinda nearly dying, was for nothing, but I also kind of like the darkness of that. Also, as we reach the end, we get another appearance from Mrs. Flood. And we really are just repeating last season's arc, aren't we? I mean, yes, it's not exactly the same, because Mrs. Flood is clearly aware and working towards a specific goal, but functionally, it feels exactly the same. And it's just boring. I don't care about it. The Doctor not being able to get Belinda home is enough. We don't need a mystery box on top of it. But, yeah, this is a pretty solid episode on the whole that's needlessly bogged down by being shackled to one of the show's greatest successes. Ultimately, I do still really enjoy it and think it has a lot to offer. It's just hard for me to not feel disappointed when it stops halfway through to remind me of a genuine masterpiece that this was never going to match. So I think because of that, I'm going to settle on a low-end 8 out of 10. It's one I can see myself warming up to even more over time, but for now, that's the highest I'm willing to give it. But what did you think of The Well? A perfect sequel? Disappointing follow-up? Somewhere in between? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you next week as I review Lucky Day.